This video is going to be a little all over the place, but hopefully once we're done, you'll have a better outlook on art styles and how to evaluate the styles you like. So let's get started. Let's get something out of the way first. Now, I accept the nuances of most art discussions, but this really is one hill that I will happily die on. Art styles are severely overrated. Your worth as an artist has literally nothing to do with having an art style, and you are not lesser or better because of it. A lot of artists, especially in the beginning, put a lot of emphasis on finding their unique art style. For some, it becomes a huge insecurity to not have that one thing which screams, "This is me," because of some generational myth that an artist's worth is based solely on their originality. It is something that, in some cases, can be so binding that as soon as someone feels the slightest bit confident in their work, they'll be the first to claim that they finally found it, as if there's no more growth beyond that point. After going through that a lot myself, I can tell you coming out the other side of that wave that art style is not something that you should be anxious to find or create. It is something that you will absolutely and naturally grow into many different times as you, as a human being, continue to grow and mature and improve. And even once you come into something that you truly feel comfortable with, at the end of the day, it still shouldn't be restrictive. You can certainly be selective about the things you draw, but you shouldn't have to be stopped from experimenting with a new set of proportions or a different amount of detailing just because it doesn't fit with your chosen style or format. If you're interested in a new direction but feels like it goes against what you've already defined as your style, then you're putting too much importance in a place that really doesn't need it. No one is really going to come after you for drawing something that's totally outside of what you might have already defined as your brand. In fact, I think this is one of the coolest parts about art, is that it doesn't stop evolving and growing just because you as a person have finally become comfortable with yourself. It's something that will constantly shift as the things that you consume on a day-to-day basis change, as new artists come in and out of your life, as your mentality towards life changes. So really don't feel like you have to stick with this one thing that you've defined as your little sandbox. I was totally and utterly convinced at many points in my life that I'd finally found my style. Perhaps this is also partially due to my interest in trying out different techniques, but more often than not, I'd find myself drawing with a completely different process or completely different result nearly every week depending on my mood and the influences I had at the time. So in reality, art styles are not really things that can be defined or declared, but rather things that people around you will slowly begin to recognize you for. Things like fashion or color palettes, certain method of sketching or line arting, a specific texture or lack thereof. These are all things that, if are truly comfortable for you, will come back again and again until you inevitably find something or someone new to inspire you. What I hope to achieve at the end of this discussion is to broaden your perspective on the possibilities of art through the act of stylization. We're going to look at how you can use stylization to experiment and achieve different solutions for different problems. By the end, I want you to see art styles as less of a destination and more like a journey with pit stops that will span the entirety of your career. So let's start with the three pillars that I think really define stylization, at least for me. These three pillars are proportion, complexity, and aesthetics. So let's start with proportion. If you've ever learned anatomy in a structured manner, oftentimes you'll be taught the quote-unquote standard proportion for the human body. This includes the 6 to 8 heads, the various third measurements, all that. When it comes to stylizing this standard, it's all about changing the ratios of these measurements. Exaggerating, minimizing, scaling, thickening, all of these shifts will add up into a proportional guideline which will describe that particular look and feel. Certain genres are defined by a certain type of proportion. Fighting games like Street Fighter and Tekken are known for having larger extremities, such as hands and feet, and it's primarily to do with the importance of those two elements during gameplay. There are a lot of movements which use the hands and feet as contact points, and having them take up more real estate on the character proportionally gives them a more grounded look and draws the viewer's attention to those defining characteristics. Manga and anime like Sailor Moon and Revolutionary Girl Utena are both IPs which are heavily idealized and romantic in their view of reality, and the proportions of these characters reflect the beautiful perspective they carry. Certain cartoons like The Amazing World of Gumball and Chowder rely heavily on simplistic iconography to define the look and proportions of their characters, allowing the silhouette of a character to add just as much to the design in lieu of extraneous detail. How someone chooses to approach proportion will say a lot about their personal aesthetic tastes, both visually and functionally. How closely a character in a particular style resembles reality can help set the tone of the overall project. Often more mature or serious media stays relatively realistic, with more monotone or darker color palettes and accurate visual representation. The more abstract and/or youthful the media is, the brighter, less strict, more fantastical things tend to skew. This doesn't mean these equivalencies can't be switched or subverted, but there is an inherent connotation that can be drawn based on where the art style lands. Following up on that last point, let's get into complexity. Complexity describes the visual range between styles of intricate detail and minimalism. How much definition someone chooses to add to their work, either through textures, weathering, patterns, detailing, etc., will also help define the look of a style. Styles suited for illustrations, video games, and movies can get away with having medium to large amounts of detail, while more labor-intensive media like comics and 2D animation tend to simplify where they can for a more efficient art style. Last one on the list is aesthetics. This last one has bits and pieces of the other two, and in my opinion is worth mentioning despite the subjectivity of it. The appeal of an art style will have a lot to do with the specific visual preferences of you as the viewer. For some artists, it's a way to get from point A to point B, but for others, it's a way for them to explore and exemplify an aspect of their brand of visual expression. This might just be pieces of their actual interests, such as hyperfuturism, cyberpunk, cottagecore, plant things, I guess. But this could also be represented through the quality of the lines and shape language they use. Small things like texture on the brush or the precision with the lines, to the type of fashion or color palette used on the whole piece overall. Some art styles are recognized for a certain look or habit, while others are stylistically practical because it's just meant to be an avenue for communication in order to elevate its subject matter, like fan art or sequential storytelling. So we've sort of covered what I think are the three pillars when it comes to stylization, which is proportion, complexity, and aesthetics. The stuff we talked about in this video are pretty abstract, so how do you use these building blocks to answer your personal questions when it comes to art style? Despite my previous ramble on how arbitrary art styles are, I still think it's a good exercise to take a look at what kinds of pieces really speak to you. There's usually a reason why certain artists and styles interest you, and figuring out the whys and hows behind it can help you determine for yourself what you value visually. Not only that, it can also be useful when you're starting to outgrow your current inspirations and need a new direction. If you're more of a casual planner like I am, you can sit down every couple of months just to evaluate where you've been and where you're going. Take some time to establish a list of short-term and long-term goals that you'd like to achieve within the coming months or within the next couple years. Long-term goals are helpful when setting trajectories towards skill sets that can be used for job applications or personal future projects. Short-term goals can be focused on fundamental revision or stylistic workshopping that can help you communicate your ideas better in the current time and space. If you like more concrete ways to ponder the question of style, a method you can use to break down your stylistic influences is one I learned from an old teacher of mine, Scott Flanders. He calls it the Triforce of Influence, and he has some content about this on his Patreon and YouTube videos, but here's my take on the same concept. You will more than likely be remaking a guide like this several times over the course of a year or even a period in your life, so don't feel too precious about it. It's meant to change as your tastes evolve. So in this top triangle, you have your closest inspiration. This is the best analog or top style that you're currently influenced by. In the second triangle is a style that you'd like to work towards, something that you haven't yet achieved, but it combines with your other inspiration to make up about 80% of your stylistic influence. This third triangle is often referred to as the wild card. It's the artist or style that feels totally unrelated to the other two, but it still has an element that you think is really integral to the work that you want to be making. You'll see in the margins that I've specified why I've picked these specific artists for this Triforce of influence. From there, you can use the 3 pillars we discussed earlier to figure out how they achieve the look and why you're drawn to it. Again, treat this as a casual, introspective meander through your goals and tastes and how that's reflected in the artists you admire. Don't feel like just because you put these thoughts to paper, it results in a binding contract, and don't worry about rushing or sticking with a particular look just for the sake of having a style. There is no particular reason to pigeonhole yourself by trying to wrap your head around style before you're really even ready to move on from just enjoying and having fun drawing. So to wrap up this chapter, we went over some myths about art styles, what are some of the building blocks of stylization, and how you can approach applying these basics to artists and styles you admire. There's no mission for this chapter, but feel free to post any thoughts or questions you have, or even the Triforce if you end up making one. In the next chapter, we're starting our journey into character design with research and development, so I'll see you there.